Climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. How would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time?
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water.
Your administration has handed down deregulations for water that will actually pollute drinking water for millions of Americans.
The cleanest air.
You've also been rolling back vehicle emission standards and more.
We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard.
Backhanded insult at Joe Biden.
The best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years.
Most of that reduction in carbon emissions happened during the Obama years.
Under this administration, we are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy.
That's a strange choice to compare us with, but we actually pollute more per capita anyway, so...
The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars.
The Paris Climate Accords are non-binding. Also, we should be spending trillions of dollars.
And we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs.
The fossil fuel industry only employs 1 million people.
Thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord.
So much whining, dude.
Climate change, climate warming, global warming is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, here
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan.
How? Are we talking about taxes? Because that's certainly not going to happen.
That his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3.
I wish. AOC plus 3 support the Green New Deal, which Biden does not.
They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion.
He's talking about the Green New Deal here, which Biden doesn't even support, but let's just humor him for a second. The study that he's citing actually says $93 trillion, not 100. He just rounded up. But if you look at the methodology of that right-wing think tank study, it's really terrible. I mean, they talk about $36 trillion coming from universal health care, despite the fact that universal health care would actually save us money. And another 40-something trillion dollars of that comes from a federal jobs guarantee, and they just assume that all of that money would come directly out of the government budget. So if you remove all that, what you're left with is a far more manageable number.
If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because I want to make bigger windows into smaller windows.
He literally got this one straight out of Hannity.
As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen.
All right, that's enough of your bullshit.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was, endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America, solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills.
He literally does think
It's
that.
the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, 45, 50 bucks an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
We are energy independent for the first time.
Not quite. Close.
We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds, it's very intermittent, it's got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean.
Is he just making shit up? Windmills don't pollute the air. They do kill birds, though.
One other thing.
Find me a scientist
Solar.
who said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So
False.
It's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. You want. And what about fracking?
I
Biden to
have
respond.
never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is
Show
he's
the list.
flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need
Buffering.
industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking.
I'm more worried about the weird chemicals spilling into our ground.
Capture the emissions from gas.
You mean gasoline or natural gas? Because natural gas is pretty clean.
We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it. But it's a transition to that.
He was against fracking.
Does he not understand that fracking is a bad thing?
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking
You said
and or
fracking.
oil
You
on
didn't say
federal
fracking.
Let
land.
me ask, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely.
This number comes from Census Bureau information filled back in March, when everybody was locked down and only the richest people were actually bothering to tell us about their financial situations.
9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back.
Cut back on what?
We saved our oil industry.
Yay, big oil. I'm glad you looked out for those little guys.
And now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline.
Most people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And more oil refineries in Marcus Hook in the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turning the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Would you close down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
Look at that punchable face. He looks like he scored a point here.
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
and
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he
final
gonna get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right, I think Biden won substantively at least, but that all depends on whether the voters can detect that Trump basically lied every time he opened his mouth during this segment. I mean, there's not that much you can do when you can't really predict which lies that Trump's gonna make up. He did expose himself by answering the last question by simply saying, yeah, I don't care if they die as long as they feed the economy. But I don't know, I think this is sort of a soft win for Biden.